Alright, homies, welcome back to another game review of Legion TD2. This time we're being in Fizzlebot's Red's shoes, and we're trying to figure out how we managed to lose this game against Ioni C and Yoke Onyu. And we picked the Fiesta Mastermind, I think probably in the whole Megamind at first, and then we picked Fiesta as it's a good pairing. I'm not entirely sure, obviously, because I wasn't around and I couldn't be bothered to check the logs for much longer. Right, so let's quickly have a look at the roll. This was our initial roll, by the way. Thank you for Mr. Drachir for this amazing tool that he has built for us, so we can really have the same interface now for these reviews. And it's very easy for me to copy paste the rolls. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the Proton Fiesta, as Proton kinda really is an overbuild unit because of the mana, so you want a really long wave. And if you're too much under, then essentially it's very hard to leak quote-unquote small-ish. The unit really becomes amazing when you're plus value or like on value. So I would have considered not picking Proton and not picking Flower and then picking Goblin Copter instead, and probably the Looter just as it because it gives you good gold early on. Um, it has a little bit less late game potential, I guess, without the Flower, and you have some other issues, but this is also very, very solid early on. And you can always go 6 workers, probably get a good Fiesta on wave 3 with the Gargoyle, have a lot of workers and have a lot of pressure. But I think this is comfort mostly. I think this is also very fine. It leaves us with a little bit less weak waves, like around, right, with my suggestion, you definitely have a weak wave on wave 12. So you kind of want the Flower, and playing Fiesta with only the Goblin Copter as a tier 1, which I just put away because I am an idiot. Right, with only the Goblin Copter as tier 1 is always a little bit iffy, but you can definitely play this as well. I mean, it's as Mr. Jules would say, that it's a trade-off, and you have to decide what you want to play for and what you don't want to do. Um, Potentially also looking at your teammate's role, who has Shadow Dancer and is gearing up for a hero Shadow Dancer role, so I guess we are not super worried about an all-in on 12. But with counterattack, we definitely have to consider that it might be a big wave 12 sense, so I don't hate having the Flower in here, and I don't hate going for this. Anyway, I would have still picked some slightly differently because I prefer the Goblin Copter Fiesta over the Proton one, but I don't think this is something that you quote unquote should be doing or something. I'm just saying there were other options, and for me personally, I prefer other options, but I don't think these options are inherently stronger or whatever. I think it's just preference. Okay, so King ups on 1, and we managed to leak very small. Beautiful. This is very good. We're building quite high on the lane. I would potentially consider building like 2-3 squares lower, just because the atoms start gaining mana once the wave starts. And the more mana, the more good, you know? Mehr mana, mehr gut, mehr damage. But yeah. And we don't have Boar, we don't have Serpent. I guess this leaves us open for rerolling it to Boar, which is not horrible with his positioning, and Serpent. So there are some benefits to this. Again, I would have probably committed for the early game a little bit more, built a little bit lower, and just said I'm not going to reroll into Boar. Again, also with looking at our teammates' role with the Shadow Dancer, we're not, I guess it's not super likely that he's going to pivot out of the Shadow Dancer because it's a good hero target and it's his only carry unit. So I would be very surprised if we ended up being hard pressed for Boar because we suck on 12, 17, 19. I think our teammate will always cover us there. Okay, so wave 2, we had a Gargoyle, we get snailed. What a surprise. We get a perfect Fiesta. We also snailed the Pipsqueak, who is champion. Very fine. He's gonna hold. Whatever, I would have snailed as well. Probably had that in income. We push. We add one more gargoyle, which is, I guess, fine. Could have even considered staying 170 value and kind of playing a bit Sui-like on Fiesta, but it's probably not worth given that we're sending into Champion Pipsqueak. So it's just income king at this point. And now we see that it's possible for us to target wave 7. Against the Pipsqueak, we kind of have to because he's going to snowball out of control otherwise because the unit is still broken. I don't know if this was pre-hotfix nerf or post, but even post, the unit is very, very strong and you have to put pressure. And the thing with wave 7 is it's also good against Joke on you. Now you might say, what? He has a cat, he has an infiltrator to counter brutes. Yes, but cat is weak, like super weak against big sends on wave 7. So if he gets a mimic, he's probably fucked, unless he manages to snipe the mimic with the buzzers. But even if he gets like a lot of brutes, he's probably also leaking very, very significantly. So we can aim to do king damage on wave 7. And it's not like Indarhole has a weak wave coming up. He has an early game powerhouse as well with his Goblin Copter, and we have Atoms and Green Devils and stuff. So at this point, we can decide to target wave 7 if we want to, and this is what we go for. And I think this is one of the correct choices. One could, of course, income a little bit more, but then it's very likely that Johnny is just going to snowball with this unit. This unit kind of forces plays like this just because it's so broken. Thanks, Jules, by the way. Thank you. We need a little bit more power creep in our game, so everyone can be 8 workers on wave 3. Really, we just need more economy. Anyway, teammate gets a dino on wave 4. Holds very well. We save. We get a Fiend on wave 5. We hold, and now we do something that's very smart, in my opinion. And that is we full shift on wave 6 and add an even split here and make sure we leak small to no send. Now, why is it good to quote-unquote take this risk? Well, this is because the enemy team does not consist of idiots. The enemy team at this point is realizing that it's most likely a wave 7 send, and that they don't have a lot of pressure, they don't have any Mythium thresholds that they're gonna hit, so they do not want a long wave 6, and they don't want us to push workers, so they will not send us here. Right? Of course, now you could say reverse psychology. We expect the Fiesta player to take this kind of risk, so I'm just going to full resend and try to leak him full creeps or whatever, but it's not super worth it because you're not getting, like, this would give us a free hold on wave 7 and potentially an even longer wave and potentially push. So I think this is just absolutely correct to play it like this, especially since Indarhole is not leaking here to a resend. So now wave 7 comes, we build correctly, we leak small to the full send, teammate leaks a little bit more, this is a little unfortunate. Maybe it would have been the Pegasus for him, but I guess I haven't tested, but this is probably fine. We send Mimic Brute, correct send. Mimic Double Snail is probably also correct into Joke. It's always close with Brutes against Cats, but given that there are 3 buzzers, at least one of them gets sniped very easily. The Infiltrators are really good at sniping Brutes as well. So I don't know. We could of course test this against Triple Brute. Let's quickly have a look, but I think this heavily depends on RNG. If one of these units last hits Mr. Well, if the Mimic last hits this guy or this guy, and then it gets sniped, then obviously it's kind of weak. This is what happened in game. So I assume if the 2 brutes do not get sniped, then this might do even better, but I'm not sure. The brutes are not so good against the infiltrators, and they are now in the split. So let's see. Yep, this is, well, roughly the same. Let's see if this mimic sniping is consistent or if this is even good for us. Like typing wise, you obviously want to send mimic, right? I mean, this very clearly. I was just testing because brutes can sometimes be very, very good against the Nekomatas. Now the mimic did lasted a buzz, and now it's being targeted. But this might just be too late. I don't know. No, the cat is on it. The cat is gonna kill it. Okay. Yeah. Well, smaller league than compared to in-game. Yeah, very, very small league. So I guess brutes might be a little bit better, but it's like I don't blame Indahol for doing this because there's also a chance, like it's very close that you get the mimic, right? And there's also a chance that enemy might go for an orchid specifically to hard counter the brutes. And if he does orchid and you triple brute him, he probably holds. So it's just these big early game sends are always a little bit of a gamble. If you reach ogre, of course, that's probably much better. Anyway, I don't think this send is a mistake or whatever. I think the outcome is pretty decent for us. Yeah. Right, but now what we have to do is we have to. Right, okay. So in general, when one team starts this quote unquote cringing, saving business, going for king damage, um, we will be turning the game into what's called a cringe fest, or everyone is kind of forced to play a little bit more save heavy. So at this point, these are the income numbers that we have after we send for wave 7, and Fizzlebear is behind in income significantly, and Interhole is slightly ahead, but there's the cartel penalty coming. So economically, this save into full send on wave 7 is not worth it on the income level. It's slightly worth it in terms of league gold, but the real advantage we're getting is the king HP. And now what we have to do at this point is we have to leverage this king HP diff into some sort of an advantage, either by making sure we actually kill the opponent because they're low HP, so it's easier to kill them, or by forcing them to being safer and to get an economic advantage that way. And at this point, the enemy has like two choices. They can either try to do a little bit of income king to get their king back up, which is good if we just try to scale at this point. Or they can try to get counter damage done. And it's very often the case that people go for counter damage in my experience, just because having a lower HP king is really a tactical disadvantage. And at this point, especially with counter attack in the game, there's an aggressive spell. We kind of have to pick a line, and I would like to protect us against a long save from the enemy for, say, wave 10. Just because, like, looking at our rolls, if Indahol gets saved 7 into 10, he's just gonna leak. There's nothing he can do about it. He has to reroll and try to hope he finds a very good unit. And sure, we have Halo and we have Atoms, but our tank value is gonna be super sus for wave 10. So I would have, at this point, at least communicated with my teammate how we want to play this and what wave we're targeting. And I think if we want to protect 10, looking at their builds, it's very natural for us to target wave 9. And if they push off of this send, then they have to send on wave 9. Or if they want to skip wave 9, they have to literally zero push here, and then we just outscale them hard with our workers if we income king on wave 9. So yeah, I would have wanted us to skip wave 8 and check their values and then decide whether we think they both shifted for a good solution for wave 9 or not. But, we both go income king, they save on us, and now we can't really break them on 9, and they have really good push. And at this point, we're committed, so we income king again. And we see that they are giga undervalue, so we get baited into a full send on 10, which into Johnny is probably correct, but into Joke on you, it's not necessarily correct. I mean, we get a little bit more king damage, but maybe income king would have protected our king better. But this line exactly is why I would have preferred to skip wave 8 and force wave 9. Because we are stronger on wave 9, not necessarily on Fizzlebear, but Indahol's build is really strong on wave 9, and if we can force them to go wave 9, Indahol's game really opens up. Like, he has the cartel penalty coming up, so even though he's ahead in net worth and in income, he's not really ahead. Like, in fact, he's kind of struggling a little bit, and he's going to struggle post 10. So I think we are doing very good if we enable him a little bit. And I don't think, like, if you skip here, right, and you see these values, what could they have? Well, they could add like a soul gate. Is the most common kind of answer for wave 10, but we can send 200 and 220, and I don't think with these values a soul gate is really gonna cut it. Johnny C doesn't have enough tanks for it. Joke on You also doesn't have enough tanks for it. I think there would be big leaks even if they had this. And looking at their push and their options, if we skip wave 8, they have to send on 9, and they will probably still leak very big, and we probably end up winning the game. And of course, this is a little bit like result-oriented thinking, but I mean, maybe Kid K will just say, no, you're flat out wrong. What we did with Income King is correct, and here's why, and write a 20-page essay, and then I'm very happy to admit that I'm wrong. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I just think personally skipping 8 to protect our 10, to protect against long saves, is better. Because even if we see, okay, the income king us here, and they are like, I don't know, on value exactly. Okay, fine. We get more workers. We just income king on 9 as well. No problem. No problem. We're not like forced into a stupid play or whatever. We still have the king HP advantage that we want to leverage for, say, wave 12, wave 13, maybe with aggressive spell, whatever. So I think in a lot of lines, going 9 is much better, and I can't see a line where skipping 8 to send on wave 9 really loses us the game. Whereas this line, I think, can lose us the game in a significant amount of lines. Especially like we were dictating the game pace with this send, right? And with the king HP advantage, we can dictate how the game goes because the enemy has to respect our full sends a lot. And with this income king, we are giving away this advantage. And we're trying to turn this king HP advantage into an economic advantage. And to a degree, this works because if we look at the incomes after the wave 10 send, they are now 150 for us, 160 for us, 143, 148. Indahol is going to fall behind a little bit with his cartel penalty, but we are ahead economically slightly. But I don't think giving up a huge king HP advantage, or like huge, maybe not huge, but like 35% to a to even king is, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily worth it. Okay, but we did it, whatever. Now mid-game comes and we have to decide how we want to play this, right? And there's counterattack in the game, which is obviously great synergy with Fiesta, but I think this synergy is a little bit overhyped because like leaking on wave 11, 12, it gives you like 30 gold from Fiesta or whatever, and you lose like 10 or something. So it's a minor, quote unquote, minor gold boost that you don't have if you do League with another mastermind, but the Mythium is really what you pick this counterattack for, and this is great with any mastermind. If you can League small, it's always worth it. Doesn't matter which mastermind you are. Unless you've like triple egged or whatever, but yeah. Alright, so what's our line after wave 10? I think the natural wave to target against Johnny is wave 13. And wave 13 isn't amazing into Joke on you, but it's also not horrible. Likely, I mean, we expect him to play YOLO, right? And he has shown 5 of 6 units, and it doesn't look like he necessarily has, like, I don't know, a Doomsday. I mean, he might have Doomsday, but it's quite unlikely. He doesn't really seem to, I mean, he could have Phoenix, but then he would have built differently, right? He might have Sov, but it's. I don't really expect him to have a Sovereign in this kind of role pick. So he doesn't look amazing on 13. Like if we ram his ass, then his Orchid boost isn't amazing. Might even be a Kraken angle. And Johnny is kind of weak there as well. So if we can target this, it's very good. We pick the counter attack, which I think is correct. And teammate is going for hero to scale with his DK, which I also don't hate. Yeah, I mean, he is quite light on tanks with this catapult he built, so maybe forcing this DK isn't super worth it, but it gives him very strong 11-12, and we are not super good on 11-12. We still need to sort of worry about the enemy team going counter-attack 12, so I guess it's fine. And now, enemy team income kings on wave 11. We don't know exactly why we even played for this league here, which is really good for us. Teammate picked hero, very good. And now Johnny and Joke are really like giving away the pressure advantage, and I don't really understand why they are doing this. Because they have to be worried about wave 13 themselves, right? This is only ever good if we decide to both pick hero and overbuild, but I don't think our quote-unquote game plan so far looked like we were going to do this. Anyway, this is happening, and now I think we should just make sure we target wave 13. Could even consider 14, but that's a stretch, right? 14 is better against Joke, it's weaker against Johnny. They have a lot more income, so we need to be a little bit careful here. And now, I really think at this point we should be deciding where we want to go, and we should always consider full resets, because we are Fiesta and we pick counterattack, so the enemy is naturally going to expect us to take a little bit of a risk and try to leak again. So at this point, we should have very clear priorities. One of us should play to hold and the other one should play to make a long wave and to really push. And it's at this point, even though we get more value from counterattack, it might even be fine for Indahold to push, because he is sending into the slightly better, stronger player on wave 13. But then he has to communicate this and tell us, hey, I would like to push in this spot. Can you make sure you hold wave 12? But this communication doesn't happen. I checked the logs. There was no real communication. Hey, I'm leaking next. I'm not leaking, yada yada. And then we built the death cap, but we have a split. Our build is not super strong, so we end up leaking 56% to a full resend. And teammate is building the Shadow Dancer, but he's pushing one worker here, and his I'm super light on tanks kind of build is really biting him in the ass, because he also leaks to the Mole Brute resend. And now this game gets really awkward, because we are feeding the enemy team a lot of gold here. And yeah, we've even pushed off of this league, which we definitely cannot afford to. Teammate is also pushing off of this league, and we've given them a lot of gold. But even now, at this point, we have to realize we have a lot of Mythium. king is low, but we somehow very nearly survive, we have to send on wave 13. Because otherwise, we are just dead to another resend, and they will obviously full resend. Like, they've read this play with counterattack. They understand that if the play for us is to go 13 and we play it correctly, they are probably fucked. So they play for a misplay and full resend on 12, which works. And now we have to pull the trigger, but we save. Unlucky. We save for next game. Well, at least we start our next game with like 600 Mythium now. Yeah, that's my analysis. There's not really much to say about us dying to the resend. Maybe we even die if we go here and lose the race. I don't know. I think the real mistake is pushing off of the send, not playing safe. But it's very easy to say in hindsight, because you never expect, after they clearly play to scale here, you never expect them to go full resend. It's such a crazy line to consider. Obviously, the very, very best players in the world, if they're on top of their game, they usually like consider resend lines. But it's very easy to miss, and once you've missed this, your game is very, very hard to play. I think you can still recover off of the send, but you have to zero push once the send enters your lane, which is against your intuition. You have to understand that you're both leaking, and you have to commit to the 13 send. And all of that is very hard to do because, right, the natural tendency is, oh, I'm getting a send, I will do okay, I'm gonna push a little bit. And then it's rough. It's very, very rough. So anyway, short summary. I think we played a very good Fiesta game. The choice to go wave 7, I think, is very good. I very much dislike the resend on 8 and 9. Well, on 8, I think at 9 we're committed. And then I think we picked the correct line for our mid game, which is counterattack / pressure for 13 or 14. We execute beautifully on wave 11, then we derp around on wave 12, and then we derp around on wave 13 again and don't send and lose the game.